So I've got Mike Schleibaum.
Schleibaum,
Schleibaum?
close enough.
Schleibaum, close enough. My first question is, what was the kind of reason behind the crowdfunding for Godless Prophets?
Okay, I got you on this one. The band has put out 9 full lengths on 11 different record labels over the past of 23 years. So we had 5 albums on Victory, 1 album on E1 that was licensed to Century Media, 1 album on Sumerian Records. My point is, we have really tried every strategy as far as like releasing albums and pairing with record labels, and we've been on long-term deals like five album deals, and we've been in short 1 record deals. We have released albums before the internet and after the internet, and constantly we have had a reoccurring theme, which is that we either trade partial ownership of what we create for money or access to opportunities, or we end up chasing the money forever. I guess what I'm getting at is we went towards crowdfunding because we want control and ownership, but we ended up doing sort of a hybrid, which is actually what I think is more appropriate in the end, because you don't want to be even just thrown into one corner. You want to just try anything to get like your music and stuff to people. So the main reason was control, 100%.
Okay. But I mean, it must have been pretty overwhelming seeing how quickly you raised that money from fans.
We were terrified, we like the idea of putting it out there of how much money it actually takes to make an album. Like the amount of money that was spent on the self-titled album, Deliver Us, Undoing Ruin, like to make an album that competes with that takes money. Not even, people think you can just record it on your laptop at home now, but that's not true. We had like 23,000 right away, right? And we were like excited. Only the goal had been set at like 60, and which is close to what we've spent on some of these albums. And we thought, well, that's reasonable. But the thing people don't understand is not only do you make the album, but you press the album, ship the album, construct the album. So like, it was really scary when it wasn't like an overnight success, because we've had friends who've done it who did have overnight successes, So then we had to sort of go back to the internet and really reach out and connect with people. We tried a lot of different things over that month, and we got to that number, but it wasn't just like we threw it up. I mean, we had to work, we had to engage, we had to make a bunch of videos, we had to go live a bunch on the internet. And the interesting thing about it is it was really rewarding, because every time someone committed to the Indiegogo thing, their address, their name like would pop up, and you were literally seeing the names and the addresses of every single person who had the faith in your band enough to like do that.
It's kind of a part in why the record sounded as aggressive as it was, because you guys were like so driven.
The first thing that comes to my mind is that the album before, self-titled, was really melodic. It was basically like a creative explosion where we had a totally new rhythm section, and we had Sumerian, who was pushing us to do some radio stuff, and it was just all coming together, and we made 14, I think there's 14 songs on the album, 16 on the total, it's a lot of songs, a lot of material. And I think after that happened, we stepped away from the record and thought, man, like, what is a Darkest Hour song now? Like, it used to be sort of this like punk, thrashy, hardcore, metal, hybrid type thing with now currently proggish tendencies. And then on that album, it was also a ballad with a girl, and also a mid-tempo rock song, and also a pop song, And so I think the reaction was, after you do everything, what are you? You know what I mean? What is the sound of the band? And so I think it was a reaction to the other album, and then I also think it was actually where we wanted to go. Like, if you take those 16 songs and you cut those things down to 8, like some of our other albums, you have like a really aggressive Darkest Hour album. It's like if you take Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 and you only put the good songs on a playlist. We do this all the time. It's a great album. You just have to cut out the Elton John stuff and, the sort of ballady, boring things, and you kind of get a good Guns N' Roses album.
What kind of role did Kurt Ballou play in the record?
Well, he was the ultimate uninfluencer, if that can be a thing. No, Kurt did an awesome job, because he clearly is a man who is doing this all the time. He was like the ultimate, like, well, what do you think? Instead of like where producers in the past have been like, do this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he surprised us in a lot of ways. Like the first song off the album, there's a really awesome mosh at the end of the song, and that's Kurt's riff. Like this was a song, and what's crazy is the first song on the album, Knife in the Safe Room, we all like it. It didn't change very much from how we originally wrote it. I mean, some of the other songs changed a lot. The drum beats changed, riffs move around, but that song was like, oh, this is cool. And so John wrote over it, and it was done forever. And then we got in the studio, and Kurt made it way fucking better. Once he did it with what we felt like was the best song, without him even knowing it, it was almost like he was a samurai. Then we were hooked because we knew we could trust him. Kurt's vibe was constantly calm. It wasn't like the other albums that were a lot more emotional in some ways.
But what about the artwork? What's that sort of meant to represent?
So first of all, Instagram is awesome, okay? Because we had no idea how to find like anyone good, and we didn't know what we were gonna do. And I found this guy who basically he was in Savannah, and he had studied with John Baisley, who had done the Deliver Us cover, named Sean Budry, and he had done work for like bands that we really like. This band Kylesa, Mastodon, sort of bands we had toured with a long time ago in the era of when Baisley did the Deliver Us cover. On the album cover, you have the two main characters of the story in the album are on the front and the back, and that's mainly the artwork.
A lot of my friends, whenever we talk about Darkest Hour and stuff like that,
oh boy,
everyone always says that you guys are like the best death metal band, right?
Well, we need to meet these guys and get them to the show here tonight at the Underworld.
But I was wondering, why do you think you guys are kind of like the underdogs of the genre?
We have been a band for 23 years. We existed before the internet, but we got signed relatively young, So I think we have come up a long way to where we're at. We're not a band that sort of has been the same, and we've sort of have evolved. And when you do that in front of people, it's really hard to battle back from whatever their first impression is, right? So if I've been doing this for 23 years, I've come across a lot of people over that arc, and I've had a chance to interact with those people, and maybe they know me as like a super short-haired, straight-edge vegan hardcore kid, because that's what we were in the beginning. Or maybe they know us more as like the more metal, punk rock, Scrogger kind of crust punk look we had right around Undoing Ruin. Or maybe they know us as like the long-haired, bearded, tattooed-looking band that did the Eternal Return. But I think when you're evolving and you're changing, it's hard to constantly redefine your band, what your band's about, because people have distinct like memories of what they think a band is, and then they get really pissed when the band isn't that.
Yeah, when they change it.
So
do you think that's just kind of like metalheads in general, that they're just kind of scared of change sometimes?
No, look, I don't. You phrase that question in a negative way. I think that it's positive that people react this way, because I think it means they like something. I love fucking political grindcore. Well, then that isn't pop music. Now, maybe I also like some pop music, but I hate fucking country. You know what I mean? Or maybe there's always going to be something. So I think that to love something also is to like kind of put it in a place in your life where it means something. So it's okay to feel like when something seems counter to that, to have that reaction. One thing I think that is interesting is we've played with some of the most phenomenal players that are out there. Like you can go to like the Young world, you can go to like Animals as Leaders. They open for Darkest Hour. You could go to like the more metalcore world, like Whitechapel. They open for Darkest Hour. You could go like more death metal. And I mean, we've been on tour with Cannibal Corpse. They didn't open for us, but we've spread the gambit of. Yeah. What's funny about the band too is we've noticed on the tour every night, especially in the non-English speaking countries, they'll put a description of what your band sounds like under your band name.
Okay.
And every night it's different for us. Like every night it says, thrash metal for Havoc, but for Darkest Hour, it's crazy. It's metalcore, it's thrash metal, it's melodic death metal, it's melodic metalcore, it's new wave of American heavy metal. But the reality is, you're actually kind of in a cool place because you've been forced to be hungry that whole time. You've been forced to evolve, and so like we've been able to play with these amazing players and not be completely fucking embarrassed off the stage, because if we still played the way we played in the early, like mid 90s, there's no way we'd even be relevant.
Okay. So finally, what's the next step for Darkest Hour then?
Man, that's a tough question, because we have been on tour for the album for about a year, although it would be cool if we could just tour on this for as long as some of the other albums. It doesn't seem like everybody's attention span in the world's long enough for us just to not put out an album anytime soon. We have a split 7-inch we're going to do on Southern Lord. It's going to be pretty sick, which is going to be a split with John, our singer's other band that he does. But the thing is that John's other band, they're called the Primals. They're like poppy-ish. You can Google them on the internet. Other than that, though, we recorded put together in a fun way a Black Flag cover of the song Police Story. So we recorded the Black Flag song inspired by our drummer Travis. He's a huge Rollins fan, and he was like just jamming out at home, and he made this killer YouTube playthrough in his home studio. And I know that he records everything, so I was like, yo, send me the tracks. And we made this fucking crazy cover, and we were like, what are we going to do with it? And John's band, when they recorded the record for Greg, they recorded this cover of the band Unbroken, the song Absentee Debate. They were around in the 90s when we started the band, and we loved this band. Okay. So for us, this might not be a band you give a shit about or you ever heard of, but it's an amazing fucking song. The band's called Unbroken. They're fucking awesome. And it's going to be a cool split, but as far as like, when is Darkest Hour album 10 coming? Man, I don't know. Record ideas, all the guys in the band, they put them on the internet somewhere, and eventually we make an album out of it. And so we're into like, put whatever ideas you got out there, and maybe through all the fog, we'll do another album. I mean, John and I don't seem to be guys that are stupid or smart enough to quit right now. So I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, we're always working on stuff, but we have a few more tours left. Like Canada, we're going to try to do in late July, and we're trying to get over to Asia because we have a bunch of fans in Australia. It's been a minute, and also in Japan, which we love. So we can probably hopefully do that by 2018, and we can get to the other thing, but it's really hard to focus. And I think it's important to take our time at this point, because you have to ask yourself in Darkest Hour, does the world really need another album from you? And if it does, can you make it as good as it needs to be to exist? Because the other day I was looking at Megadeth, and they have a lot of fucking albums. I mean, a lot of albums. And I am a huge Megadeth fan, but I'm not sure if every one of them needed to exist.
Good things come to those who wait, sort of thing.
I don't have a release date for you. Is what I'm saying, kids.
Thank you so much for having a chat, dude.
Cheers, dude.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.